So recently we went to Tucson, Arizona, and the entire purpose for that trip was to do filming locations for 2 movies. Well, actually originally it was to do filming locations for 4 movies, but since we were on kind of a tight schedule, I realized that was unrealistic and I cut it down to 2 movies. And of course, one of them being Can't Buy Me Love, which I already posted the video for, and the other being Revenge of the Nerds. Now, when I did Can't Buy Me Love, I did that one first, and the weather was beautiful, everything went smoothly, and then when it came time to do Revenge of the Nerds, I got to the first location, I opened the car door and put one foot out, and it started to rain. And I don't mean sprinkle, like within a minute it was pouring, and within about 5 minutes the streets were flooded. And at that point, I didn't really know what to do because filming the next day was out of the question. Like I said, we were on a tight schedule and we had to leave the next morning. So my point is, this isn't the exact Revenge of the Nerds video that I had envisioned. I wasn't able to get all the shots that I wanted, but I kind of just had to make the best of it. And I was able to film a little bit the next morning. And so you'll notice throughout the video that the weather changes. One shot, it'll be raining, and then it'll be sunny, and then it'll be overcast, and that's why. So anyways, without further ado, today we're checking out filming locations for the comedy classic Revenge of the Nerds. Let's go see what we can find. Gilbert, Lewis, and Lewis's dad are on their way to Adams College, traveling down Interstate 10, passing exits like Grant Road and Prince Road. They then take the exit for Adams College, which in real life is the exit for Congress Street and St. Mary's Road. And pretty much nothing at this exit is the same. Everything here has changed since the movie was made. We then see them traveling down Broadway Boulevard, approaching Campbell Road, and you can see a church in the background. Here's that church. Pay attention to that bell tower because you're going to be able to see that a little bit better in this next shot. As they move away from the church, you can see that bell tower, and as they pass through the intersection, you can see a Jack-in-a-Box on the corner of Broadway and Campbell. Now there's that church and the bell tower, and this is where the Jack-in-a-Box used to be. It's now a Black Rock coffee bar. We see them driving through campus, and they're driving on University Boulevard away from the entrance that they just came through. They're then driving in the opposite direction, coming away from the old main building, coming around this big area of grass where the old main fountain is. He then comes around and he pulls the car up right here and comes up onto the sidewalk a little bit before eventually parking it right here against the curb. And it was right here where he sits and has the talk with Lewis and Gilbert, and you can see all these buildings in the background that still look just like they did. And as they're taking the trunk off of the car, Lewis's dad wants to snap a picture of him on their first day of school, and he's standing in front of the social sciences building. He would have been standing right there on the sidewalk, pointing his camera towards where I'm standing. And this tree is now blocking the sign, but if we come over here, you can see social sciences. So Lewis and Gilbert pick up their trunk and they head off to find their dorm, which is funny because in real life their dorm is just a couple hundred feet in the opposite direction of the way they start going. But they start walking across this grassy area, walking through the giant puddle and stepping through people's picnics. And when Gilbert and Lewis are walking to their dorm, that's when they first encounter the Alpha Betas. It was right there on that second story where Ogre's dangling the guy over the balcony, and he sees Gilbert and Lewis walking across the street, and he starts chanting nerds, and Gilbert and Lewis stop right here, and they're trying to figure out where the nerds are that they're chanting about. And I just can't believe how much this building still looks the same. So like I said, Gilbert and Lewis are standing across the street trying to figure out where the nerds are. And that's when Lewis says one of my favorite things in the movie.
I think they're talking about us. No way.
Of course, they realize that they are talking about them, and they better pick up their trunk and get out of there. So cool to see this building in person. Gilbert and Lewis finally arrive at their dorm, and that was filmed at the University of Arizona at Cochise Hall. And I'm sure you know this is not the last time we'll be seeing this building. Of course, the Alpha Betas end up partying too hard and burning down their house, but as we just saw in real life, that house is perfectly fine. I'm sure this was filmed on a back lot. But the Alpha Betas now need a place to stay, so they come to take over the freshman dorm. And again, this was filmed at Cochise Hall. Now there's that window that Ogre just threw him out of, but what about his roommate?
Ah! There's your roommate, pal!
Oh, perfect. This is the Bear Down Gym here on the university campus, and when the freshmen get kicked out of their dorm, this is where they're forced to live. This is the shot we get when they're first brought into the gym and they're being told about their housing situation. And remember, the gym was split into two. One half was all of their cots, and the other half was still being used for basketball practice. And you'll notice the gym looks a lot different. The coach here was just telling me that they did a full remodel of the gym, changing that whole other half over there. But notice these windows up here that are in groups of 3. You can actually see these in the movie. All of those scenes were filmed here inside this gym, and actually right here is where they would have all been standing around listening to the dean speak. So yeah, all of those gym scenes filmed here inside the Bear Down Gym, and of course we get a few establishing shots of the outside of the gym throughout the movie. Lewis and Gilbert are anxious to join a fraternity, so they have a place to live, so they go to visit the Pies to see if they can recommend a fraternity for them to join. And they would have been walking along this sidewalk, and then they cut across the front yard, and this was the Pie fraternity house, and it still looks a lot like it did in the movie. Of course, they've added a fence and some more shrubbery, and for a while this was a bed and breakfast, and it would have been really cool to stay here, but I read that it recently closed down. I'm not sure if it's now a private residence again or not. And Lewis is talking to Betty, who's sitting on the front porch, and it's kind of hard to see now because of the bushes in front of it, but she would have been sitting right there in front of that post on the left side. So after Lewis does some flirting with Betty, they're on their way, but of course this is not the last time we'll see the Pie sorority house in the movie. Betty sends them to see the Alpha Betas, and in a very dark scene, we see Lewis and Gilbert walking up the front steps of Cochise Hall. Now notice as they're approaching the front door, notice that border going around the door. It's still exactly the same. Now, although we never actually see it in the movie, in a couple of different scenes you can see Booger wearing a shirt for Greasy Tonys, which was a staple here in Tucson, Arizona around the university. The Greasy Tonys was serving up sandwiches for 30 years, and this right here is the former location of Greasy Tonys, but it closed down after the owner passed away. It then became another restaurant and then eventually was torn down, and I believe it's now student housing. Gilbert's coming out of class when he runs into Judy, who's standing out front with her accordion, and we see him walk out of this front door. Of course, you can see the doors have been replaced. He comes walking down the steps, and Judy's standing right here in front of the building. Now, this is the Forbes building, and this is another location that looks exactly the same. I mean, everything here is the same. Even that plaque on the wall can be seen. And after chatting for a few moments, they begin to walk this way, and he of course offers to carry her accordion, but immediately drops it. Meanwhile, Lewis is out house hunting, and he thinks he's finally found the perfect place, so he immediately brings the rest of the freshmen over to check it out. They of course are not too thrilled about the condition of the house, but it's nothing that an 80s montage can't take care of. Now, the good news is the house is still here and it's somewhat recognizable. The bad news is you can't see it because it's completely covered by these trees. So after they fix up the house, Stan and Betty come pulling up on his motorcycle, and Stan is definitely not happy that they were able to fix up the house. Not really sure why he cares, but they would have been sitting on Stan's motorcycle right here, looking at the house. And of course, Booger is leaning up against the fence, watching as they ride off. And that's when Booger says that line. I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about. Now, Louis is so excited that they've become Tri-Lambs, he goes over to try and ask Betty to be his date for their party, and that takes place on the porch of the pie house, and I think that might be the same light hanging on the front porch. Of course, Betty says no and leaves Louis standing lonely on the front porch. Now, during their party, somebody plays a practical joke on him and lets a bunch of pigs into their house to run wild, and the Tri-Lambs come running outside to, of course, find the Alpha Betas waiting for him. The Tri-Lambs would have been standing right here on the front porch of the house, and the Alpha Betas would have been standing on the back of a flatbed truck that was right in front of their house. It would have been right here in the street, and it's kind of hard to see in the movie because it's dark, but you can just barely see the park behind them. Now, I, of course, would have loved to get inside this house and see the living room from the party. You can see right here that it's now a Quaker meeting house, and it says visitors welcome, so I was really tempted to knock on the door and see if they would let me come in, but unfortunately, it appears that nobody's here. This is the football stadium here at the college, and I wasn't able to get inside today because they are having football practice and there's a lot of security and they're not letting the general public in, but it was here where the Tri-Lambs come and they pour the liquid heat all over the Alpha Beta's jock straps, and then they hide out inside of tunnel number 2122. And thanks to Google Maps, we can see right here is tunnel number 2122, and they hide out in that tunnel watching the effects of the liquid heat, watching as all the Alpha Betas come running towards them. And it was out here in the middle of the field where Ogre and the coach were standing as the rest of the Alpha Betas go running towards the locker room. It's now time for the Greek Games and Charity Carnival, which of course kicks off with the Tricycle Race, which you can see was located right next to the football stadium. The bad news is, this is where the Tricycle Race was held. They're currently constructing a new building in the parking lot where they had the Tricycle Race. You can see right there is the football stadium. It now has a front on it. In the movie, it was open. And this is a bit closer to the shot that we get because that shot was taken from inside the parking lot. As you can see, the football stadium is now blocked by this new building. However, this building right here, this can be seen in that shot. So between the football stadium and this building, that's how we definitely know that this is the right area. I am just so bummed that that parking lot's gone. Right here, this is where the Tricycle Race was. But again, between the football stadium and that building, we definitely know this is the right spot. Just too bad it's gone. Just about a block away from where they had the Tricycle Race, this is where they had the Tug of War. Right out here on this giant patch of, well, what's now mud, but at the time it was grass. This is where they had the Tug of War. It would have been more over in this area. And this building right here, this can actually be seen behind the Alpha Betas. And that's why it would be safe to assume that it was in this section of the field where they had the Tug of War. Now, looking at the opposite side of the field, you can see the stage with the judges on it. And notice this building on the left side. That would be this building. That means right beside it is where that stage would have been with the judges. And you can see that behind the Tri-Lambs. That also means that it was in this area where they had the belching competition. All right, that's wonderful. Now, not only did they use this field for the Tug of War, this is also where they had the javelin throw. When the Tri-Lambs and Omega Mu are watching Lamar, notice that building behind him. It's that same building that we see next to the stage. Now, Lamar would have been on the opposite side of the field, and notice this building behind him, and also that building off in the distance that's under construction. This is the building that's directly behind Lamar. Notice that wall that curves into the straight wall. And then this is the building that you see off in the distance that's under construction at the time. Now, we weren't able to pinpoint the location of the Charity Carnival. However, I know it's in this same area. But notice that building in the background. Notice the design on that building. It looks a lot like the school library, and this library has been heavily remodeled since the movie was made, so this could definitely be that building. And if we look right across from the library, there's another large grassy field, and this thing in the middle of the field, this was not here at the time of filming. That's been added since. Also, right over there is where they have the javelin throw and the Tug of War, and right down there to the right is where they have the trike race. So it definitely makes sense I could currently be standing in the spot where that amazing scene takes place.
Clap your hands, everybody, and everybody clap your hands.
It's just really hard to say for sure because so many buildings around here have been remodeled. Now, of course, the Alpha Betas are so angry that the Tri-Lambs won, they have to go over and trash their house. But don't worry, the Quakers have since fixed it up very nice. The Tri-Lambs come home to find their house completely trashed, along with all of their belongings. Gilbert decides he's had enough and he's gonna go take care of it once and for all, and he heads to the big pep rally. And if you look really hard behind the stage, you can see the old main fountain. Now we're back in the same area from the beginning of the movie. The stage would have been right there in front of the fountain, and right over in this area is where the bonfire would have been. Gilbert tries to approach the stage as all the Alpha Betas are lined up behind it. They would have been lined up right over here, and they stop Gilbert from walking up to the stage. They grab him and they start walking him up towards the fountain. They would have been lined up right over there, and then they're walking up this way towards the fountain, and that's when they pick him up and they throw him into the fountain. But with the help of UN Jefferson and the other Tri-Lambs, Gilbert's able to get the microphone and let the entire crowd know that he's a nerd and proud of it. And again, that was filmed out here on this big area of grass in front of the old main building, and it is just so cool to stand here and picture that scene being filmed. So awesome. The crowd loves Gilberts Speech, and they all come down and join him and Lewis and the rest of the Tri-Lambs, and we have our happy ending. Well, that's going to do it for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.